Okay, so time for worksheet 24. There are a lot of annoying questions on this worksheet, but hopefully, I don't know, it's annoying. This worksheet is annoying. Let's start with question 1. And the question's asking about absolute extrema for a function. So the first step, like you have no choice, the first step is to find the critical points. So don't even think twice about it, just take a derivative. And this is one of those derivatives we've computed in class. Set the derivative equal to 0. Again, don't even think about it. So if secant x tan x is equal to 0, that means either secant x is equal to 0 or tan x is equal to 0. And if you kind of recall what the graph of secant x is like, or if you just sort of look it up, actually secant x never equals 0. So the only option is for tan x to be equal to 0. So this is our only option, and that would mean that sine of x is equal to 0, or in other words, that that kind of forces that x is n pi. But in that case, the only solution that's in that interval between minus pi over 6 and pi over 3 is x equals 0, right? So the only solution in that interval is for n equals 0. So that's our only critical point. So the first step, find the critical points. Second step, check for absolute extrema. And there's a couple different ways you can check for extrema. Here I've chosen to do it by plugging in. So I'm going to plug in the endpoints, and then I'm going to plug in that critical point. And the reason I chose to just plug in is because my function is simple enough. It's just secant x, and the endpoints are, one of those standard angles. So I figured I just, and the critical point is just 0. So I figured I'd just plug in. So secant of minus pi over 6 is 1 over the cosine of minus pi over 6. You can check, that is 2 over square root 3. Secant of 0 is 1 over cosine of 0, so 1. And then secant of pi over 3 is going to be 1 over cosine pi over 3, it's just 2. And so that gives me, so the largest of these values is 2, so that's my absolute maximum value, and that's at x equals pi over 3. And the smallest of all of these is 1. The square root of 3 is less than 2, so if you divide 2 by the square root of 3, it has to be larger than 1. So that tells me that 1 is the smallest value, and so the absolute minimum, that's an error. The absolute minimum is 1, and that's at x equals 0. And we're done.